Welcome back to Soulful and Sober. I have my guest on today, Joe Bush. He's been on my other podcast, or not another podcast, but another episode where he talked about
Yeah.
his sobriety journey. But today we're really going to focus on financial debt, all the things that I think are so important to talk about, especially as we get older. And if you don't know Joe, he's a teacher, he's a coach, and he's just a wonderful human being. So thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for being on today.
Thank you. Really excited to have this. And I know we've had discussions about finance and money, and it's something I've been teaching for many years. And so there's a lot of people of all ages, the high school kids that I teach, 18, and then there's the 25-year-olds who call and ask me questions about debt and all that. So I'm looking forward to sharing whatever I can with your audience.
Yes, and I'm really excited too because I think this is a topic that a lot of people actually don't know that much information on, right? Like I don't think it's taught that much and it's
Yeah.
very overwhelming if you don't know about it. So I think I want to start off by asking you what are some really important things that you would tell maybe someone younger or someone maybe starting out or what any tips, to prepare for the future?
Yeah, I think that the two big things that I focus on with my students is avoiding debt and investing early. So those are the two easiest things to start with. And I always like to explain this for the students going to college is every $10,000 of debt that you have is going to be $100 a month for the next 10 years of your life. So if you have $60,000 of college loans, it's going to cost you $600 a month for the next 10 years of your life. And so getting ahead of that decision, are there better things you can do with community college or scholarships or, asking yourself, do I have to go to Arizona State University, which, there's travel and there's, you may not get as many scholarships. Are there smaller liberal arts schools that you can go to that will keep you out of debt? And, I think the debt cycle starts there. And then, you try to get an apartment and you've got all this debt and then you take on credit card debt and then it just kind of escalates from there. And so, obviously colleges have become more expensive. I can't say, if you want to do a certain thing, maybe you have to take on debt, but the general conventional wisdom is not having more debt than your first year salary. So if you're going to make 50 grand your first year, don't have more than $50,000 worth of debt. If you go and take $150,000 of debt and then you become like a preschool teacher where you're making $17 an hour, it's going to be really hard to pay that off. And then the other part is investing early, that once you get that first job, taking that 10% and putting it into something, a Roth IRA, a 401k, and just get that growing from the very beginning because essentially you've never made any money before. And so if you make that salary of $50,000, putting away that $5,000 shouldn't hurt you too much. And then you can just add to that each and every year thereafter.
All right. Well, this is definitely good information.
Uh,
And I kind of want to break it up too, because I think you are so knowledgeable with this information. I think a lot of people feel like, well, what if I don't have a choice to take this money out? Or what if I don't make this much money? How can I put 10% away? So there's so many, I think, variables for people. So somebody's struggling, let's say they're in debt, they not sure where to start. Where would you think would be a good place to start?
So I love the teachings of Dave Ramsey. I mean, that's been someone that I've followed for years. And he's got his baby steps. And the first step of any of them is to just save $1,000. And you put that $1,000 away. And the goal is that shows up for emergencies. So you're driving your car and you get a flat tire, you have to replace that. So trying not to take on more credit card debt. And then his next step for debt is line up everything from you know, college loans to credit cards to personal loans, whatever you have, line it up from least amount to most amount, and then just start paying off whatever you owe. So if you have a $400 credit card bill and then a $5,000 um, personal loan and then a $10,000 debt, if from college, you knock off that $400 and then you attack the 500 and then you go from there. And so he calls that the debt snowball method, which has been proven like psychologically because you have three debts and when you knock off that 400, now you've only got two debts. And so psychologically, you think you're winning versus paying on that 10,000. You still got these other things hanging over your head. And, recently we redid our kitchen, and we had the leftover money from the cabinets, and so I put that on a credit card, and I was just waiting for to get paid, and I didn't keep a balance or anything like that, but I just saw that amount, and I was like, this is terrible. I hate this. Like, I want to just pay it off immediately. And I think we get stressed about debt, and it piles up more and more and more. And so that's a simple thing. And I think like Ramsey is probably the best at knocking out that debt. And I think it starts simply there, and then he's got some more steps about investing and what do you do, and all that.
Ooh, I love that. I think that's such a good idea and step, and I will be following him as well.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and it's the other thing, like I've coached people, and the first thing we do is we get out an Excel spreadsheet or Google Sheets, and we just look at, okay, how much money is coming in, and where does that money go, and we need to tell our money where we want it to go, as opposed to just letting it happen. So the people, every day it's $7 at Starbucks, it's $12 at lunch, and all of a sudden that $19-20 adds up, and then that becomes you know $100 a week, $200 a week, whatever it is. And that then all of a sudden you look at the end of the month, you're like, well, where did that 400 come from? And it's that $20 a day, 5 days a week for 4 weeks. And it really starts to weigh in on us. And, there people are saying, well, I can't find $5,000 a year. Well, you can find $7 for coffee every day, and you can find $12 for lunch every day. There's your $5,000.
100%. And so I actually started a budget. Gosh, when was it?
Good.
2024. Started a budget in
Okay.
2024. That was my big
Yeah.
goal, and it is so helpful. And it's really not that hard once. And I mean, I have an Excel sheet. Everybody has their own thing, but I think doing it on
Right.
your phone is fine. But I personally like seeing the Excel sheet, and now I have it set up. Gonna sound super fancy, but I'm telling you, I had help for this. I did not do this myself, but now I have it on for for the whole year. So now
Wow.
I can go to February and be like, okay, what are my expenses? And so I already know,
Yep.
like, going into that month, okay, I have this coming out, like if I have my car insurance. And
Hmm.
so, it feels overwhelming because I used to feel very overwhelmed with money and how do you budget? Where do you start? And I think
Right.
that it's helpful because, like you said, is if you don't know, number one, how much money you have, like, you
Mhm.
know your paychecks, right? We all know our
Right.
paychecks, right? But if you're
Mhm.
like, "Oh, I can spend this and this and this," and then all of a sudden you're like, "Oh my goodness," because if you can't see it, you sometimes out of sight, out of mind, and then for me, it's like seeing it on a big spreadsheet, like on my
Yeah.
computer versus my phone where I can't see everything. So, like, for example, if I know, like I said, if I have to pay car insurance next month, okay, I have to think that for that 6 months of the car insurance to be like what 500, whatever people's insurance are.
Yeah.
Um, and so that like was helpful. So I definitely would 100% recommend that because it's really easy to spend a lot of money, and going out to eat is, like, insane these days, and groceries
Right.
are expensive, so it's, like, trying to figure out, okay, what do I actually have to spend each month, and
Yep.
what are things like you said, maybe my coffee habit, like, I enjoy my Starbucks, but maybe it's not serving me that many days a week.
Right. Yeah, and there's little things that you can cut back here and there, and that's where, one of the clients that I work with, she's like, I use this, or she uses phraseology. She's like, I got totally naked with my budget, and I just finally like exposed everything to Joe, and we, in like 2 sessions, we had it knocked out. So this wasn't something that, every month I come back and I look at her budget. We set up a system. She follows
Mhm.
the system. We check in here and there, and it just works. And I think until you figure out where your money is and where it's going, and the first thing I would do is like, people who exercise or diet, the first thing I tell people is just for next week, write down, tell me all the exercise you do, tell me everything you eat. Don't change anything. And then we'll look at the habits you have and we'll start making small adjustments. So you don't get into that I'm only going to eat chicken salad every day and I'm going to run 4 miles. Well, if you've never done that, your body's going to break down. And the same thing is true of your finances. It's a matter of, okay, write down, just do the normal things. And then we'll look at, okay, do you need to go out to lunch 3 days a week? Or maybe it's just one day a week, or maybe it's, having coffee only on Fridays, and all those things start to add up. But it's, you know, I, when I first bought my house, my wife and I talked about being $20 to death. And it was like you we went and bought like a fixture that was $20. And then we bought some paint and that was $20. And it's like we never spent that much. We never spent more than $20 or $50 on a thing, but you got the credit card and it was like $500. And you're like, what the heck? Like I don't remember that, but it was so many trips. It was 20 trips to Home Depot at $20 a pop. That kills you. And I think that's where people fail to see it. And maybe, they, I don't know, psychologically, they're like, I need my coffee. And that's fine. Everyone can have a thing, but there usually is something that we can cut back on.
I so agree with you. And I love what you said about not changing anything and just being an observer, right? Because, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, your financial situation could put you into the freeze, fight, flight mode
Yep.
when you look at things. So it's like the baby steps. Okay, what are small things I can do? And like, it might be, okay, I'm going to get somebody to help me with a budget because I don't know where to start. So instead of
Right.
doing nothing, it's like, what's like a solution we can look at versus, and I totally get though being overwhelmed. And I think, you know, part of that is a culture. We don't teach this to our, to kids in school, right? Like it's very I don't remember learning about budgeting or financial situations. Most of the things we learn are from our parents. And so like
Yeah.
that's a whole nother subject, but so I think it's so good to have this education so it's not as scary and people are prepared versus just
Yeah.
everybody's going in debt.
Right. And in the next 20 seconds, I could overwhelm everyone just throwing out like 529, IRA, Roth IRA, 403B, 401k. All those things are out there. And you're like, what are any of those things? And, this isn't the time or, topic to go through every single one of those things, but you really have to start somewhere, and just think about that. I'm gonna try to save that 10%. I'm gonna try to pay off debt as quickly as possible. And that's the easiest thing. But there is a lot of like mindset work that goes in behind it. And one of the
Mhm.
simple things that I like to teach clients or my students is this concept of, savings versus investing. So savings is a very scarcity mindset thing. Like we're saving, like something's going to go wrong. I got to use this money later. And investing says, hey, this is for me. I'm going to use it. My money's going to make money. And in making that money, I'm going to be able to do exciting things later in life. So sometimes just the verbiage and that awareness, you alluded to it, like don't change a million things. Let's just pause. Let's see where our money's at, and let's see how we talk to ourselves about money. And it's similar probably to sobriety, where it's like, all right, let's pause. Like, why am I having, a glass of wine every evening? Why am I drinking 6 beers during the Super Bowl or whatever it is? Everything I think starts with awareness and asking ourselves the question, like, how do I talk to myself about this? And what maybe do I need to do differently, or what mindset shift can I have to go in a different direction?
Oh, this is so good. This is so good. And I agree with you. I think awareness is huge. And it's okay to like acknowledge that you're scared and you don't know what to do and you might need some help. But I also think that you're absolutely right is, sometimes the way we think about things actually trigger us and put
Hmm.
us in a whole nother a whole nother like level. And I used to
Yeah.
tell myself that I wasn't good with money. It's not necessarily having money, but like budgeting. It wasn't my thing.
Yeah.
I didn't I really didn't know where some of the money like I just figured it was all going to the account. Like I didn't have to worry about anything. I didn't pay the mortgage. And so and while I actually respect people's, choices if that works for their system and their marriage or
Mhm.
their relationship, everybody's different. But I
Yeah.
think like partly it was just me like believing that I was bad at it. So if you're bad at something, then that's a whole another mindset shift where okay, well I can't budget. I
Right.
can't do this. I can't do this. So you're basically kind of like you feel almost like you can't do it. Like, and then
Yeah.
you don't do it. And then, yeah, then you have that scarcity mindset. And then, whatever other fears or worries you have around money.
Right. And it's that paralysis by analysis is, and like even some of my students, we'll talk about kids that cut class. Well, why do they cut class? Most of the time it's because there's some friction point, something that they can't do or don't want to do or don't believe that they can do. And so there's a test on Friday and they're like, well, I'm better off just skipping class and I'll talk to some other kids about what was on the test and then I'll take it on Monday. And I think that happens as well with money. And we say to ourselves, I'm not really good with money. And so, we push it away. And there's two things that when we do our mindset work on money, one of the things is asking people, what was your parents' relationship with money? So what did you see? And if you're 5 years old and all you do is see your parents argue about money, money becomes a stressor. And then you get older and you push money away because you believe money is a point of stress. And so you get to be 40 years old and you're like, I don't have any money. Like, what happened? Oh, I get it. Like, money was a negative thing to me. And so there are a lot of mindsets, and there's four specific mindsets, that I have in my own world that I had to wrestle with. And the first is my dad used to say all the time, money is the easiest thing in the world to make. And so he's like, you can always just get a job. And so what do I do now in life? I have multiple jobs. I got coaching and I coach my kids basketball and I get paid to do some leadership training and there's all that. And so I've taken that. And then my aunt who did very well financially, and she talked about,
Mm.
experiences over possessions. And I was like, okay, so now I want to like take more vacations. And then I was the youngest of 7 kids. So I heard from my older brothers and sisters, oh, Joey gets everything. Like he's, mom and dad spoil him, so much. And then my in-laws have been a big influence and they're savers and they save and save and save and save. And kind of on the opposite end of what my aunt is. So all four of those things go in my mind. So I've been a saver, but then I want to have the experiences and then I want to prove my brothers wrong. And then I take on all these jobs because money's the easiest thing in the world to make. And I've had to sit with all of those and figure out like, what do I want? What do I really believe about money and go in that direction?
I think that's a really good point that you just shared too, is everybody has a money story.
Hmm.
Everybody has a money story.
Yep.
And it's funny because even like, let's say you have somebody that's really wealthy, sometimes they have a money story. Sometimes these people are like, I can't spend money. So they have a boatload of money, but they're terrified to spend money and
Yeah.
they don't ever do anything with their money. Right. So it's the absolute opposite. So
Hmm.
I think it's really good that you brought that up because we all have an upbringing and every parent had different views on money. Money
Yep.
doesn't grow on trees, right? That's the popular one. But yeah, and then you
Yeah.
have to work really hard for your money. So you think it's really hard to work for your money and it's stressful and so money is actually not very enjoyable, right? Like it's a lot of
Right.
work. Mm.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, yeah, I think the other mindset that goes is, asking yourself, like, what is this worth versus what does this cost? And so even as people come to work with me in coaching, it's like they're like, well, what's the cost? And I was like, what is it worth? What is it worth for you to not have to think about your budget sheet or money or mindset and just go in the right direction? And I know the same for you with the coaching that you do. Like if someone could say to me, hey, like I'm really struggling with X and you can create a shortcut that I don't have to
Mhm.
think about that anymore, like that's worth a lot of money to me. And, you think about like the people that you've helped with sobriety. It's like you've saved them money, you've saved them stress, you've saved
Mhm.
them relationships, and that's worth tens of thousands of dollars. And yet sometimes we look and like, I don't know if I could really pay that much. It seems like a lot. But how many things do we have that are conveniences? We spend $1,000 on a phone because of what it's worth and what it's going to do for us. And then that difference of, what does it cost versus what it's worth is really sticks with me a lot. And there's shortcuts that I take, and then there's some things I'm like, you know what, it's not worth. I'm not going to hire someone else to take care of my yard. I'm going to cut my grass, and yeah, I'm going to lose a little bit of time on that, but it's that's okay. It's not worth that.
Yeah. And I think what you're talking about too is I can do this versus I'm scared, right? Like, because if,
Hmm.
when people have to invest in themselves, there's a potential that what they think, if I don't do this, what if I don't do this and I fail? So it's so much easier
Yeah.
to not fail. So I'm not going to do the thing and I'm going to talk myself out of the thing. But the thing that
Right.
I have all this pain, right? Whether it's drinking or, you know, and money is painful. It can be very
Yeah.
painful. So, so
Right.
I think sometimes you have like these two parts. This one part that's like, I know I need to change. And this other part that's scared to change because what if I don't do it? My identity, there's many different factors. So I think it's, I think it's good that you actually said that too, because I think it's hard for people to think about what if this doesn't work?
Hmm. Yeah. And it's, I love the phrase from Pastor Craig Rochelle, and he talks like, you do what you do because of what you think of you. And so if you think you're bad with
Mm.
money, you're going to do bad money things. And if you think you're great with money, you're going to save and you invest. And the same way with, sobriety is if I believe that I'm an alcoholic, if I believe that I am drunk, if I believe that I have to drink a ton to have fun at a party, you're going to act on that. But as soon as you flip that mindset and you say to yourself that like, I'm a strong-willed person who can have a good time without drinking, I'm a
Yeah,
person that wants to be free, you start making different choices.
100%. You don't have to always like, I think this is the biggest thing too, is you don't have to always like feel 100% ready. And this is the big thing. And
Mhm.
you get this. We
Yeah.
often get confidence once we do the thing. We
Yep.
often aren't going to get confidence, then do the thing. So it's sometimes it's having faith and just knowing you're led this way and that's just the way you're going to go. And, obviously, if people can't afford something, of course, that's one thing. But I think
Right.
ultimately, um, sometimes our fears are what prevents us from doing the things that we're really called to do.
Yeah, for sure. And the more we do it, the more we build evidence that we can do it. And you just think about anything like tying your shoes and riding a bike. There was no evidence that you could ever do that, but then you tried it and you made a mistake and then you figured out and whatever we're doing and people get all worked up about, well, okay, I'm going to start saving my money. Well, where do I put it? Well, and then we just again that analysis by paralysis or paralysis by analysis that okay, I can't I'm just going to freak out about this. And it's like, well, just start putting a little bit money aside in a savings account, and then just start putting it into the Roth IRA, and then just start investing it in an index fund and start there. And you'll hear people, well, my index fund made 18% last year. You only made 12, and it's like, well, if you didn't put anything in, you made zero. So just start somewhere, and you'll see like how quickly it grows.
No, I love that. So speaking of more money, so now I know the difference between a traditional and Roth IRA. Um,
Yeah.
Now, do I know everything? No, I don't need to. And I think that's the big thing is you don't need to know all the nitty gritty. But can you go talk to us a little bit about, I know you mentioned all those different funds. What are
Yeah.
what are some that you think that are probably the more important ones? Or and I know we talked about the two IRAs, but you'll probably touch on that anyways.
Yeah. So I think the number one thing that you can do is the Roth IRA. So that's the first start. And the reason I love that is it is an account you put money in, and then when you take it out at 59 and a half or after, it's completely tax free. So if you put $1,000 in there today and it turns into $100,000, you can walk into the bank, you can take that whole $100,000 out in cash, you could put it in a suitcase, you could throw it around your bedroom like Scrooge McDuck, and you can jump around and have a good time, and you're not gonna pay any taxes on that whatsoever. So that's why I love it. The other reason I love it is because everything you put in is after tax money. So if you need it to buy a house, to get yourself out of an emergency, you can take that money out because it's already been taxed. So a simple example is you can put a max of $7,000 a year into it. So if you do 7,000 for 10 years, that's 70,000. Easy math. Well, that 70,000 might have grown to 100,000. Now you want to buy a house or, the emergency comes up in a car. You have access to that 70,000. Now, I wouldn't suggest taking it out. I don't recommend it at all, but you have it. And so you could take that whole 70 for yourself and you've still got that extra 30 that's going to grow for you and continue to go. So that's why I like that first. Dave Ramsey talks about if you're at a job and you have a 401k or if you're a teacher 403b, if they're going to match it, they're going to give you $3,000 if you put in 3,000. Take the match first, then do the Roth IRA, and then go back and do a little bit more for your 401k. But IRA is just individual retirement account. anytime you hear the word Roth, that just means that whenever you take it out, it's going to be tax free later in life. So they have Roth 401ks, Roth 403bs. But it's just the Roth IRA offers the most flexibility and the most tax-free growth that you can have. And there's no restrictions as to the money you put in when you can take it out. And then, when you're 59 and a half and older, you can take it all and just go crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's um yeah, that's so good because, I actually didn't even know the difference between traditional and the Roth IRA, which one's
Yeah.
taxed and one's not, like you mentioned, once you put it in and you're able
Right.
to take it out, it won't, you don't have to worry about taxes with the Roth.
Mhm. Yeah, and
Is there
then you could pass it on to your kids without taxes. Different with a 401k. So 401k, you're going to save yourself money on the front end. You're not going to pay taxes, or you're going to lower your taxable income right now in 2026, and all that money is going to grow. But then when you're 72 or whatever age they change it to at the time, you have to start taking that money, and you have to pay taxes on it. So if you take out $40,000, you're going to get taxed. You should have a lower tax rate because you don't have as much income, but the government wants their money. So I like my father-in-law who's retired, he lives on X amount of dollars a year, but he's required to take X plus 20,000. He's like, I don't need this extra 20, but the government wants their taxes. So now he's got to take that. He takes it, he puts it in a CD or something, and then he gets taxed again on that. So, it's crazy the amount of things. And so that's why I love the Roth IRA, because it's like, look, today I'm going to pay taxes on that 7,000. I'm going to put it away, but I know at 59 and a half, I'm going to have whatever amount of money and I'm going to just be able to run with it.
Yeah, yeah, and when you say the 59 and a half, you're saying because if you take it out prior to a certain age, you do get, like, taxed,
Yes,
correct?
you get right.
Okay.
There's a 10% penalty. So if you were, let's say you had $100,000 in there and you were like, I'm 52, I want it all. They're going to take 10% right off the top as a penalty, and then they're going to make it as taxable income as well. So there are penalties for that. Pretty sure. I know there's definitely a penalty. Maybe not taxable on the Roth, but yeah, it's definitely you have to wait until that age to get there.
Yeah. Okay. And
So
is there any other things that you would recommend, to somebody in, like, the financial world? Like, what like, there's the Roth IRA, there's obviously trying to save money. Is there anything else you would suggest people doing? Obviously, a budget if they're able.
yeah, I would say just start with a question of, what result do I want? Um, how much is enough is another question. So the first question, let's dive into that. Um, what result do I want? So do I want a bigger house, or am I content with the house that I have? I mean, that's important. Do I need a nicer car? Can I have this car for 2 more years? I think sometimes we get caught up in saying, well, I just need more. I automatically just need more. And my wife, when we had kids, she stayed home, and so we lost her salary for 7 years until she went back to work. And we've talked to other people, and like, yeah, I never really talked about that with my husband. And it would have been nice to stay home. And it's like, well, what result do you want? What is it that you're actually going to do? And then that concept of how much is enough? What are you trying to do? And even with me saving money over the course of time in Roth IRAs and 403bs, at some point it's like I looked at the amount and I'm like, I could probably spend a little bit more. I can enjoy and go to what, my aunt said about, having some experiences over always just thinking about savings. My light went out in my room here. Hold on. If you don't move, it goes out.
Yeah, it was like, "You're not moving."
Ah, okay, we're back. All right. That'll make awkward. So yeah, how much is enough? And then
Yeah.
the third part is that I've asked myself, am I chasing what I already have? And so I was,
Mm,
trying to get like more life coaching clients and trying to, make more money and do all this. And then I kind of stepped back and I said, I have 130 students. They're kind of like my life coaching clients. I get paid a very nice salary to do this job. And I need to dive in more with them right now as opposed to trying to get something else. So, not chasing what you already have. And so at some point you wanted the house you're living in, you wanted the car, you wanted the apartment, whatever it was. And I think just having that sense of gratitude of like, what, this is enough. This is enough. This is the result that I wanted, and I'm here and I'm happy. And I think once you do that, there's some freedom in that. And the last thing I would say, I think just giving. I mean, I've been a person that's been big into, you know, just giving away money. We started a scholarship for the kids at my high school. We recently started a foundation. My wife and I, where we can just put money in there and then give to various charities. And I think that's an important thing because, when you give away whatever percent, and some people say, "Oh, it's got to be 10%." Like whatever's comfortable. Be a charitable giver. Start with 1%, and the same thing with investing. If you can't put 10% away, start with 1% and add more. But the giving, it matters because you realize what you have, and then you realize, gosh, man, I can give a little bit more, and it makes me respect the things that I do have, and be grateful for them as well.
Oh, that's so good. And I love the contribution component. So Tony Robbins talks about that with the six human needs. One of them is contribution. And I think
Yeah.
giving back and helping people just it helps with your mood. It helps, like you said, it helps see things different in a different perspective. Sometimes I'm like sitting here complaining and I'm like, you know what? People have it like have XYZ and like really, like,
Hmm.
what am I doing? Like, it's kinda like you're just it puts you in perspective of what really matters and the things that, like, seem, like, so big for us, like, even, like, the me, me's, and I'm like, this isn't just about me, there's just so much more
Yeah.
out there.
Right. And you brought up Tony Robbins. He talks about the six human needs of love, connection, significance,
Mhm.
certainty, uncertainty, which he puts together, and then the last two being growth and contribution. And the more I've studied that, the more I've realized how, people chase love, connection, significance, certainty. They look for that on social media. They look for it at the bar, after work, or whatever it is. But
Yep.
it's, yeah,
I wrote about it in
it's
my
not
book. There's actually a part in my book about
really.
his human needs, comparing it to drinking and what drinking is falsely doing for those human needs.
Yeah, right. Because you walk into the bar, "Hey, look, good to see you again," and all, like you do feel significant. But when you can't find those things on social media or at the bar, it comes down to that next part of growth and contribution. That are you growing and are you contributing? And I don't know if it's him or I picked this up somewhere else, but how do you know a tree is alive? It grows and it contributes. And I think the same is true for human beings. That a tree doesn't get to 40 feet and then stop. Be like, I'm good. I'll stop here. And I think the same is true for humans, that we have to continue to grow. We have to continue to contribute. And when we do that, we feel alive, which is what we want to do.
Oh, I love that so much. It's so true. And I mean, I think about it in regards to probably our drinking journeys too. When you stop drinking, or even when people, are, alcohol free or, even prior to that, like sometimes people will be like, I don't feel like I'm living on purpose. I don't like there's something missing, the meaning or something is there. And it's
Yeah.
not like their life's terrible, right? It's just maybe that is that growth and contribution, if we're doing the same things and they're not really fulfilling, it doesn't mean you have to quit
Right.
your job or to go like to
Right.
drastic measures by any means, but it just kind of goes to the fact that we do need growth and
Hmm.
you know, we do need to be challenged sometimes and have that contribution and give back. And I
Right.
think, when you look at that through the lens of money too, I think, I read all this stuff on money and all that. And they do talk a lot about when you do those things that like sometimes you bring money to you when you do these other things. And it's interesting with contribution and like giving to charities and all that stuff. And like not that you should expect money back, but my point being is that when you're giving, and I don't want to get too off topic, but I know even in you will know this more than me, but even in the Bible, there's like things that talk about those things as well.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And it's, the kind of the Christian mindset of it is it's multiplication by subtraction, that you give away 10%. And like, I have more money now than I've ever had giving. And I can look at the literal numbers and be like, well, I gave away X, Y, and Z. I should have less, but I feel like I'm way more content and I have more than I ever could imagine, and they talk about that. And I don't know the exact quote, but, or verse, but it says, like, like give of more, like test me in this. So God says into like, test me in this. It's the only time that he says that. And it's like, test me in this and see if I won't open up the floodgates and pour into you so much. So I think giving more away is really significant for just changing that money mindset, because like they talk about, I don't know, Denzel Washington, I've heard say, they don't attach a U-Haul to your hearse, so you're not going to take anything with you. And that's really important. And so giving more and more makes a difference. And Tony Robbins talks about that. He's like, I didn't have anything. I had nothing. I was living in my car, and then I paid for someone to have breakfast. And it was like that changed his mindset of
Oh,
how he wanted to give.
I love that. And
Yeah.
also, if you don't have a ton of money to give your time, give your,
Hmm.
it doesn't have to be monetary if you really
Right.
don't have that money at this particular time. So what deed could you do or what thing could you do that could really help somebody? And then it's helping you too.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, we can all serve. We can all just offer something in the world. And like we have this place in Illinois or near our house, Feed My Starving Children, where you go and you just pack food that gets sent all over the world, and it's like an hour of your time, and people are being fed because of it,
Aw.
which is awesome. I looked up this Bible verse. I couldn't leave it. It's terrible. So Malachi, Malachi 3:10. Bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. Test me in this, says the Lord Almighty, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that there will be not enough room to store it. And I think that's been a thing that I've lived by is be willing to give of your time, be willing to give of your money, and really the floodgates are open, and the more grateful you are, the more gratitude comes back, and the more like willingness you are to give, I think it just comes back tenfold. So that's really, really significant in terms of money mindset as well.
No, I love this so much. I could talk to you
Yeah.
forever about this stuff. You're so knowledgeable.
Thank you.
It's great. And we're going to put all your information below, of course, for people to find you if they so choose to get some
Yeah.
help with their financial situation. But where can people find you so they can connect with you?
Yeah, so I hang out mostly on Instagram. So Coach Joe Bush, and that's financial coaching and life coaching, as well as some public speaking that I do. And I mean, that's probably the best way to reach out. Just send me a message. I got the website joebushcoaching.com, which I've kind of flipped to be more of the public speaking that I'm doing. But for your audience and your people that like if you wanted to ever just get a group of people on Zoom and just have a 20-minute conversation. I think it's so easy that it is so overwhelming. And today, truthfully, I met with a graduate of the school that I teach, and she's a freshman. And she asked me like 25 questions. Where should I put my money? Should I worry about debt first? What about loans, subsidized loans, unsubsidized loans? And you can look all of those things up, but I think it's just really nice to have someone that's willing to help. And I in terms of my coaching, my goal is to get you on your path as quickly as possible. Like I don't want to talk to you for 6 months. I mean, I'd love to talk to people for 6 months, but I'm not trying to keep them for 6 months. And so let's set up the budget. Let's, put some things in order and then just run with it. And if you've got to do some of the mindset work, we can certainly do that. But a lot of times the practical application. And so, I had a person that said, I want to meet with you like every month on the 15th, and we'll set up 6 months. And after 2, we were done because she had everything she needed. And I'm happy to give of that. I'm not trying to hold anybody back or gatekeep any of this information. So I'd be love to talk to anyone or in your audience or people that you work with, because it's something every year I meet with all the first year teachers and we have this conversation. They can ask me anything they want. And I've had 2 former students that now work at my wife's school. We've met to set up the Roth IRA and get that thing going. And it's overwhelming at first, but once you get it going and get it automated, it's pretty simple.
Yeah. Yeah. No, this has been so helpful. And thank you so much for being on and sharing your wealth of knowledge.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me, and I love the platform, and keep sharing, and I'll keep referring back to you or people to you as well, because you're doing awesomes
Awesome.
too.
Awesome. Well, thank you again.
You're welcome.